So good morning and welcome everyone to June's The New World of New Biz. I can see the room or the Zoom is filling up nice and quickly. We have at last, well, we're nearly at 1,000 of you signed up now. So obviously because it's a series, I'm hoping lots of you are going to be with us today to learn, I guess, how to fame and use PR to grow your agency. So we have a fantastic lineup for you, and I will introduce our wonderful guests in a moment. But just before I do that, I wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping, as I always do. Apologies in advance if my dogs start barking or Bam Bam makes an appearance. I know most of you like that anyway, if you've joined before. But if you haven't joined before, first of all, my name is Katie Street. I am the founder of Street Agency. We are a marketing agency for agencies and obviously do help agencies a lot of the time raise their PR fame within the industry to help them attract new business. If you have any questions for our fantastic panelists today, please do put them in the Q&A, which you'll see at the bottom of the screen. Also, we always run a poll at the end of the session. So if you're able to stay on board and join the poll, please do. We really do appreciate your time on that. And we do share the stats with you all, so it's well worth doing. And yeah, if you want to chat to other guests and people here in the audience, as I know often you guys always do use the chat function as well. But without further delay, look at that, I've done that in like 2 or 3 minutes. I'm getting good at not talking too much. I'm going to introduce our fantastic panelists. So I'm just going to change the view, which magically should put us all up together now. Well, hey, hello guys. So how do I do this? I'm going to go what to me is anti-clockwise. Oh my God, I can't even talk. Great webinar host when you can't talk. Okay. So first up, we have the lovely Wayne. So Wayne Silver joins us from Tigerbond, an integrated marketing agency. Now you're headquartered, I believe, in London, aren't you, Wayne? But also you've got offices all over the UK and actually as far as Canada, Ireland, everywhere. So you work with a lot of businesses across the industry, across various different industries, from retail, property, health, and of course your role covers quite a bit, doesn't it? You do a bit of everything at Tigerbond to a certain extent, but focused on the marketing and commercials.
Yes, yeah. The agency's sort of heritage, I suppose, it's been 35 years in existence and started as a PR agency and has now become a content agency, organic, social, paid digital, digital build, and creative and design as well. So my background is more from an integrated perspective. So I work with a lot of clients to look at their integrated marketing strategies and their omni-channel activities. So.
Brilliant. Love it. So yes, you're going to have lots to share with us about how you've helped, certainly with an agency that's 35 years old, grow the agency using fame and PR. So lots of really great ideas are going to be coming from Wayne. I'm a bit of a fan of you really, Graham, because I've known Frank PR forever. I think I didn't work directly with you guys, but when I worked at Pernod Ricard, I used to look after the prestige brand portfolio, which sounds ever so posh, but basically the expensive drinks and champagne, because I used to like hanging out in the West End mainly, I think, when I was younger. So Graham is not only the founder of Frank, but also has had quite an interesting few years because you guys sold and then bought the agency back quite recently.
That we did, yes. Originally sold the business in 2007 to an Australian business. Got a chunk of it back in 2012 once we finished our own out as part of the agreement to stay on for another period of time. And then what with COVID, the fact that the shareholders were still in Australia, I put together a deal that saw us buy the remaining 75% in a management buyout just at the start of the year. So we're fully independent again. And Frank sort of feels like a startup, even though it's 21 years old.
Yeah, I mean, just such a great agency. In fact, I was listening to your co-founder on a podcast with Nathan Anibaba the other day, which was super interesting. And I love you've built a lot of your own fame and I guess your proposition around this talkability concept, which we will dig into.
Indeed, yes.
In a fair bit of detail. So yeah, any of you that don't know Frank PR, where have you been? Go and check them out. They're huge. One of the most famed PR agencies. Worked with every
That's
single
very kind, Katie. Thanks.
I can think of. So yeah, you guys have done a great job.
Thank you.
And last but not least, my twin, Katie. We've got the same name. And Katie and I are both big swearers, so we already know today's going to cause some controversy. So Katie actually is here with the brand point of view. So she's currently global head of PR and comms at Swarm Markets. And obviously there's so much going on in the world of FinServe, FinTech, your experience at eToro previously. So Katie has already teed us up. Well, me and Graham and Wayne, I'm trying to remember everyone's names. Me and Graham and Wayne have been teed up with a few kind of FinTech, FinServe little words and acronyms that we didn't know. So we promise if Katie accidentally says any, we will help work out what they are for you. But I'm sure that there's a lot of you on here who already work with a lot in FinTech and FinServe. So it's a very fast growing market. But yes, Katie, welcome. Do you want to tell us a bit more about Swarm Markets as well? Because it's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, so apologies if I use any jargon. I think most people tend to use jargon in an attempt to sound intelligent. So if I use it, that's why, that's the use case really. So I work in crypto markets for a decentralized financial services provider, which is Swarm Markets. And in a nutshell, what that means is taking the traditional kind of financial services market and putting it onto the blockchain where it becomes decentralized, so not run by a central authority or body. The thing that we're doing slightly different is we're actually going to be the first regulated DeFi platform. And our regulation is coming from the German regulator, so BaFin, so one of the most world-renowned regulators. Sort of to have that kind of seal of approval or that provisional license from them is quite a boon for us. We're in sort of beta stage at the moment, and we're kind of doing a phased launch approach. So yes, forgive me if I am getting too technical. I do have experience at eToro, that's where I was previously to Swarm, and prior to that I was at the London Metal Exchange. So I really kind of moved across the financial services sector in quite a very bizarre way actually. Prior to that, I do have experience sort of in the fashion and charity world as well. So I wasn't always a big bad person working in financial services. I did have a heart prior to that. So hopefully I can sort of give some kind of consumer angles to what I'm saying today. But yeah, very much here to do the sort of in-house PR view and what we kind of look for when we're choosing PR agencies.
Love it. And I think it's why we love having brands on like yourself, especially in a market that is growing so rapidly at the moment, is you do really give us the inside track on what brands and people that are looking for agencies really want to see and what will help us get noticed. So thank you, Katie, for being here. And I feel very on trend. I've just started to get, like most basic ever, so I obviously need to check you guys out a bit more, but I've just started buying crypto, which is quite fun and quite
certainly a good time to be buying the dip. So
yeah, I was going to say
it's Ethereum today. So yeah,
I know. It's a good time to buy Ethereum, is it? There we go.
Well, no. Can I just say, none of this is financial advice. I have to put a disclaimer on that. I'm just saying, in my opinion, I think it's a good time to buy.
Yeah,
but here we go.
I have recently bought some, so maybe
okay.
But I do it really basic on like Revolut. I'm not doing anything too fancy. Anyway, hey ho. So yes, we're on trend as well. So straight into the topic of the day, which is all about to have fame your agency. Graham, I am going to come to you first because of course Frank PR have done one of the best jobs, I think, and as obviously a PR agency yourselves, I guess you have to practice what you preach. It's why I do these webinars. This is what we do for our clients. So I have to, be able to show that I can do it for ourselves. But what have been the key things that you believe you have done at Frank to help, get you to that famed position that you're at today, and that you've always been at, I think, from an early stage, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I started the business off in 2000, it does seem like a long time ago, but I remember PR Week in those days used to be a proper magazine. It wasn't online, it wasn't digital or anything like that. And I remember there used to be this one agency that on the back page every week used to advertise. They used to take out the back page of PR Week used to be the diary section, and they used to take out a strip ad at the bottom of the page, and it was crap. It was a rubbish ad. That it was always like some crap joke or whatever, but it was there, and they were in this in there every week for it. And I remember meeting the owner of this agency once. I said, why'd you do it? Your ads are shit. They're not even funny. How come you spend money doing this every week? He goes, you know what? He goes, we're in PR Week every week. We get noticed, and I don't care. You're right. They are a bit crap. Some of the ads, but we're there and people remember us. And it just sort of resonated with me as quite a young guy starting out, budding, aspiring to run my own agency one day. Yeah, that was kind of important. It was better to be talked about, I guess, than not talked about. So, from when I set up Frank, I was always keen for us to be part of the trade press. Sometimes you've got to take the ups with the downs, because not every story is a great story. But that to me is the table stakes for an agency. Treat your own agency like it's a client. Devote time to planning stories that you're going to do or comment that you're going to make. Enter all the awards, as many as you can put your decent campaigns in, which obviously means you've got to do good work to be able to enter the awards, and keep that profile and buzz going. And it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because often the more you're out there, then the more the trade media come to you for comment. And it kind of, so that's kind of the sort of table stakes, which I think every agency can do. The other bit I was always keen to do on top was to ensure that within Frank there was always something to talk about. Firstly, we had the word, as you mentioned in the intro, talkability, and that's our method, our process, our mantra, how we go about work. The whole idea is we're an agency that comes up with ideas that are part of conversations, hence talkability. Talkability has endured for, all these years, and I think it's probably even more relevant today than it was back in 2000. We've got a methodology, a process, we can intellectualize it, we can evaluate it. So there's all this stuff that we can talk about at varying levels with clients. So that's kind of, for any agency, it could be whatever. And then lots of different agencies have their own approaches, have their own theories, have their own strategic insights, their strategic processes. I think it's important to have that, bring it to life, make the most of it. Something that's unique to you and that can be a talking point. And Frank, we've sort of balanced that as well with always trying to be creative and have fun stuff. If anyone knows us or ever been into our offices, they'll know that I've kind of always had a penchant for unusual design in terms of boardrooms. We've at various stages of our life had a boardroom that is either a fairground attraction, which is a set of 3 waltzers, or a beach, or a bedroom, or an ambulance. I mean, those have been the 4 iterations of Frank boardrooms over the years, which is again something to talk about, and is a bit of agency fame. And at the end of the day, I always felt for potential clients going around trawling for agencies, and they're going to see, I don't know, 5 or 6 agencies in a day. In the old days when you could travel around between the agencies, the people will all blur into one. The sort of all the processes, the campaigns, the case studies will all blur into a bit of one, but no one will forget having to take their shoes and socks off and sit in a beach for an hour as they listen to it, because they probably still got the sand between their toes when we had it. So that was always important, to create a bit of fame, have a bit of quirky boardroom. And back in the day, we were discussing it when we did a little pre-chat. I've still got very fond memories of it. We even had our own greyhound. So we had Flying Frank, who we kind of had, who was a racing greyhound at Walthamstow Dog Track when it used to exist, and was massively famous in his day and in the agency world. And for me, it was those awkward first couple of minutes when you'll meet a client for the first time, and you've got to sort of make that small talk that's a bit awkward or whatever, you don't want to say, or the weather's nice or whatever. It's a bit difficult. Actually, they'd start talking to him about either the boardroom, wow, how'd you get this idea, or they talk about the dog or whatever. There were all moments that had been, had made us famous, and that provided that talking point to get over those awkward first 4 or 5 minutes. It can be anything, and it can be, thinking about it more seriously, particularly these days, it could be some working practice or some something that an agency's got for their employees that is really interesting or different. Those sorts of talking point can be anything. But I think table stakes is the ongoing treat yourself like a client PR, and then layer on top of that some fun, exciting, relevant stuff that says a lot for you. Frank being creative agency, obviously the stakes are a bit higher for us to do creative stuff within the agencies, but different agencies that do different things. What I'm saying is make it relevant for your agency and layer that on top. I think it's probably a good place to kick off the conversation from.
Yeah, I love it. And I love how it all relates back, one, to your proposition, the talkability. You're giving yourselves talkability by being a bit different, by making yourself memorable, because you're daring to be different. And that's exactly what you do for your clients. And I think that's really important when you're thinking about your PR, is what is it that you're trying to prove or to say. Don't just, I think PR traditionally has been, and it's really interesting actually that if any of you noticed that Graham didn't really talk about case studies or their client work at all, because we all think about PR often with it, or I say we all, I don't, but I think a lot of agencies always think about PR as how we're going to promote the great work we've done for the great brands that we've worked for. And that is really, really important. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but so much nicer if you can PR yourself for who you are and what you stand for. And then the proof that comes later is, the brands that you've then done it for. Because I think, that truly, I mean, you'll be able to tell us your view on it, Katie, but I think that truly gives you some standout when you're trying to connect with these brands, because you've got something to talk about.
One thing to add, though, it doesn't always work. Just your point is that your point is right. You've got to do what's right for you, or what's right for the client. I mean, plenty of times we had, particularly with the beach, actually, that was a boardroom, we had a client come in and go, "This is bloody ridiculous. This is stupid," like that, and you kind of knew there and then that wasn't a client that was going to go for Frank, and that was fine. It would be your own sort of screening thing. So it depends on how much your appetite for risk is, and Frank always likes to, I wouldn't say a risky agency, but certainly likes to test creative boundaries, and we sort of know where we stood with clients, and I guess clients would know straight away whether they're right for us. If you want to appeal to everyone all the time, then you wouldn't take our sort of approach, but I don't think that's our target market, really.
Yeah, and I don't think people should do that. I think that actually I like that, because the brands that aren't right for you are qualifying out quite early. You're actually getting rid of the clients that wouldn't work for you, because you're showing who you are. And if that that sort of gets rid of the ones that aren't going to be good clients, right?
See, I think I would like the beach but not the bedroom, if I'm being honest, Graham. I think I'd find that a bit freaky.
Bedroom was nicer, but it was my personal preference was the bedroom. It's a bit more comfortable, and I did sleep overnight in it once as well, so it was quite useful.
I was going to say, handy for when you've been at the pub.
Exactly.
Love it. Katie, what is it that I always like to early doors get the brand view. What is it from agencies that gets them noticed, to someone like yourself? What are you looking for? Where do you look? What kind of PR tactics have helped attract you?
I think traditionally when I was at eToro, we had about 13 markets, and by markets we had PR agencies in different countries across the world. So I was predominantly focused on sort of the Nordics and APAC, and I haven't even been to most of those countries that I was managing, so God knows why they gave them to me, but interesting from a sort of development point of view, because it was going into a brand new market. So how do you onboard an agency, or even find an agency, when you've never even been to the country? You don't have the chance to go to those countries, because a lot of these markets that I onboarded were last year during COVID. So I relied a lot on sort of awards, industry reports, to understand kind of who were the best of the best in those markets for financial services. In particular, I used the Holmes report. That used to be a bit of a Bible for me in terms of the kind of who's who of financial services PR agencies. And then it was a case of kind of using that as a launch pad to then go and have a look at these agencies in more detail. I guess the things that kind of I was more drawn to was kind of those creative elements, and also the types of clients they had. So really showcasing who else you've worked for is important, because I had a difficult brief at eToro. I tend to pick companies that have difficult briefs. But at eToro, it was the world of financial services and investing, but it was very much aimed at a consumer audience. So how do you make money interesting? Which is easier said than done. So it was looking at who they've worked with previously, who they were kind of networked with. Really good to see if they had strong relationships with media. That was mainly what I was looking for. You know, we just needed to get our spokespeople in front of journalists. We didn't need any fancy stunts. We didn't need loads of money thrown at things. We just wanted to build relationships with the press. So I think agencies are better. PR agencies almost don't need to PR themselves. They just need to market themselves. And that could be creating density and leveraging their own networks kind of on LinkedIn, social media, other social media channels, to really kind of shout about the good work that they've done. So that's how I kind of went about it. I did have one very cold pitch once, just completely off the bat. It was an agency in Australia. To this date, they're one of my favorite agencies. You're not allowed to have favorites. It's a bit like children, but you do. So they're actually called LaunchLink, little plug to LaunchLink. And they came in with just a cold pitch. They knew we were looking, and they sent us sort of creds and campaign ideas. And one of their co-founders actually used eToro, the platform, and that became very apparent in the ideas that they were pitching to us, because they were familiar with the product. They knew us as a business, they knew our strengths, they knew our weaknesses, and they were able to play up to those. So that would be one of my kind of top tips for any. It might sound really kind of obvious, but any PR agency who's trying to go after sort of new business in sort of cold sense, use the product. Because it's when you get when you get questions from agencies, if they're asking about certain functionality, you kind of know if they're using it or not, and it is a bit disheartening if they're not.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. You've got to have done your research and know your place in the room. You need to have done your research, and if you don't know the platform or you don't know the product, you're totally going to be on a back foot. I really like what you talk about, and I wrote this down when we chatted pre launching the webinar today, is this kind of creating density in the marketplace, because it's not necessarily something that people always think about. But if you're showing up everywhere that someone is, and you're creating density and you're pushing out content in the right place, then you're going to get noticed. I mean, whether you call that PR or marketing, I guess it probably is slightly more marketing. But if you're everywhere that your prospects are, that is only going to help you. So thinking about the trade press that they may read, thinking about which platforms they use to do their research, and making sure that you've got different types of content and PR to kind of suit all of those. I think that really helps you get that density. But you have to be, I do think it goes back to that thing, is being niche, just like you said, Graham, making sure that you've got something to say about a specific subject or something that is going to resonate with your audience, and that you've got something maybe sometimes quite different to say as well. The other thing,
I think that, just to add one thing, that there's one risk. I completely agree with what Katie said about using the product, and a lot of the time I think it must be frustrating from a client point of view if they come across an agency that doesn't really know the product or ask silly questions and stuff like that. The one downside on that, just on a more light-hearted note perhaps, is we used to have a policy at Frank, which I've still got, is that I will get to know the product and use the product, but then if we don't win the pitch, I'll never use that product again. And a couple of times that it became really critical in my life was, firstly, early days when we pitched for HP Source, which I had with everything. So if we would have lost that pitch, it was personally a bit disastrous. The other one was when we pitched for Budweiser, which again, from a personal point of view, wouldn't have been a good outcome. Luckily, we won them both. So we also have that policy that
that's
you do get to know
interesting,
products.
because if you're already using the products and then you've gone after the pitch, it makes sense that you've won the pitch, right? I mean, you don't have to be. These people had already been using eToro, so they already got it. So they were already like leaps and bounds ahead of anybody else in the market. In the market, so it's interesting. It's products you already use. You're almost marketing.
It was. I was just trying to say the downside of losing a pitch, which unfortunately is part and parcel of the game, was the couldn't really have that product again. So for a couple, it was really, really nervy moments when the client rang up or emailed with the news a week or so later.
But good news, thank goodness on those.
Good news, thankfully, exactly.
This is why Graham's here. He's won some of the best accounts ever. I love it. Wayne, we have spoken a bit about, well, as a group, actually, we've spoken about how the difference between marketing your agency and marketing a person or your people. And I know that you guys have at tigerbond have maybe taken a slightly different approach in the past, and you've focused more on your teams and your people. Do you want to talk us through how you've kind of famed or profiled the people within the agency, and how that's helped you from a new business point of view?
Yes, I mean, just echoing really what's been said before. I mean, agreeing in terms of all the tactics, and as somebody that comes from an omni-channel background, the more touch points that you can present your agency and provide a positive message about your agency, somewhere along the line it's going to have some traction somewhere. And I think in some circumstances, agencies are sometimes flavor of the month. You get a sense in certain circuits that there's a particular agency that's winning a lot of awards or getting a lot of fame and notoriety, and I think that definitely plays through in terms of clients like Katie or other clients putting pitch lists together, even if it's a core mainstay of a couple of agencies getting onto a pitch list, and the agency that has a bit of fame at the moment is placed on the pitch list as a wild card. Even that's quite a good place to be. I suppose from tigerbond's point of view, it's a classic example of how powerful PR is, actually, whether it's positive or negative PR. So, I'm relatively new into the agency. The agency's been around for 35 years. Was called BT Communications before it became tigerbond this year. And that came from a situation which has been well publicised and covered in PR Week, where we've always had a fairly strong content strategy, a fairly mixed content strategy across all channels, whether that's print media or online. But the head of the company, Gordon Beattie, was quite maverick. He was very active on organic social, and in that sense, made a comment, and Lorna, our chief exec, is the first to suggest that it was tone deaf and colourblind, the comment that he made, basically. So as well as the sort of, I suppose the issue that it rose with the press, a lot of people saw behind the comment and understood exactly what he was trying to say. But I think the key thing about that situation, which has led to the positive way tigerbond was born, if you like, was that right from the word go, the agency didn't make any excuses for the comment. And I think that's one of the things that we've always done, is try to be authentic, honest and transparent. It did lead to Gordon stepping away from the business. The MBO was going to happen anyway. It just turbo boosted that, if you like. And I think just the other side of what Graham was talking about in terms of presenting the agency, the other dimension to PR, which I think is very important, and it's played through as a result of the tigerbond rebrand, but also in terms of what we're doing now as an agency, is I always believe that because we're in a knowledge business, people buy from people. That's why in integrated creative agencies, people get very twitchy when key account managers leave their account teams, because they know that very often those middle management people hold the very important daily relationships with their clients. And I think it's very important to showcase the culture of an agency, the people within an agency. Yes, there's the sort of drumbeat, the table stakes, as Graham referred to it, in terms of, you know, case studies and awards. And somebody once said to me once that you know, awards aren't important unless you don't win them. So, which is quite an interesting sort of spin on that, really. But I think that often a lot of service clusters and a lot of service provision within agencies is very similar. You know, if somebody's doing paid digital or organic social, there's a process to that. There are platforms that are being used. There are tools that are being used, and very often it's the people that make the difference. I mean, I talk in creds presentations and talk to clients about the fact that, you know, the main difference with our agency and the main asset that we have as an agency goes up and down in the lift every day. You know, and it's showcasing that culture. And it doesn't have to be particularly groundbreaking, trailblazing or pioneering, but it actually means that you're presenting the face of an agency and a client is making a decision about, if I pick up the phone to this particular person, will they solve my problem? Can the problem leave my desk and land on their desk? And that's why, for example, when we pitch for new business, coming back to my sort of heartland really, which is new business, we always try to ensure wherever possible that we feel the team that are going to be working on that business, because there's nothing worse than an agency wheeling in a very senior account management team and then the business is won and then the client never sees those people again, you know, and they see a totally different, perhaps sometimes more junior team. So I think the people aspect of PR is very important. And we, you know, for example, we've just launched a new behind the scenes series to celebrate our launch as tigerbond. So on a regular basis now we're showcasing people across the agency, and what they do within the agency, but what they also do as people. So because, you know, again, it's people buy from people. So can I
just jump in on that quickly, Wayne, because I could not agree with you more on that. This idea of you know, having the whole team in the pitch rather than just the rainmakers coming in, as we would call them, and then you never see them again. You need to have confidence in the whole team, right from those junior members of staff up to, you know, the big decision makers. So I think building out a series where you can put a face behind the agency and start to build that trust up again is a really interesting tactic, and I look forward to see how that pans out.
Yeah, you guys have done amazing, Wayne, and I think, well, Lisa's put in the chat, kudos to Wayne for being so honest about tigerbond's history, because I didn't know about it, but, you know, it's quite a, you know, it really is quite a story. And I mean, I'm interested, you know, obviously there's been a longer term plan to overcome that, but how did it very badly affect the agency when it happened? Did you lose clients, or was it? No,
the clients were unbelievably supportive. I think they recognised that it was one person's view, and we made a commitment as a leadership team that we would rebrand. And for example, the agency's always had a very strong ED&I strategy, and we've just now started to turbo boost that. Not really as a knee-jerk reaction. We've started to showcase it, and I've been with tigerbond for B2B4 and tigerbond for, you know, about a year. I'm fairly new into the agency structure, and you know, I'm a member of the LGBTQ+ community, for example, and I've always felt that the culture within the agency was unbelievably welcoming, non-judgmental, non-prejudicial, you know, everything. And so I feel I've got the right to be able to say that. And it was a misfire, a PR misfire.
Yeah.
And the agency had to sort of accelerate its plans. But I think it's twofold. I think it's even PR Week understood the sentiment behind the comment that was made, but there was absolutely no way the agency was going to make excuses for it. It was a mistake. Gordon actually apologised to the entire agency, rank and file, everybody. But plans changed. But all throughout the process of the rebrand, every single member of staff has been communicated with by the senior management, and I think that transparent communication has meant that every single person has been on board with the journey. And actually the final little bit of that equation, if you like, is that I've always believed, and I've been doing new business in agencies for 25 years, that new business is everybody's business. And when I was on the client side, somebody once said to me, if you go to an exhibition and you're standing on the exhibition stand and somebody comes up and says, how's business? You go, it's great. Even if it's rubbish, you go, it's great. And new business doesn't really work when I'd love it to be that a new business person is treated as if they sit in a room with a cauldron and they conjure up new business and nobody knows what arcane work they're doing, but it just doesn't work like that. And I think everybody has a role to play. So for example, if you think about just one little sort of tactic, you think about the number of emails that go out, even from a medium-sized agency every day. There's an opportunity there to place a message automated in the email signature about, it could be an award that's been won, or if that's a bit too pushy, it could be about a cultural part of the agency. And the other good thing about that is that very often clients see their agency through one particular lens. And so it really does help from a new business point of view. It helps to cross-sell because it helps to tell everybody, about a particular aspect of the agency, service provision, or work that they're doing that perhaps they weren't aware of. If somebody engages with tigerbond about PR, they may not know that we do pay digital work, and so it's a good way of promoting the agency across the board. But the key message is to get everybody on board, and we're still now being communicated with. We have regular dialogue with all of the staff, and we're split across 8 or 9 offices. And actually, the lockdown and virtual meetings has made it even easier to engage everybody. So that is really the key. Make sure every single person in the agency is part of the PR machine in the nicest possible way without being pushy.
I thought, look, from a bystander in other industry, in the industry, I thought you played the crisis, which it was, really well, and it was a really tricky situation. I was just interested whether the old adage that all PR is good PR rang true, in the sense that what did you see? Did it do for obviously you handled staff such as yourself of being one member of staff really well, and were communicating with. How did that? Did you notice any increase in incoming clients? Did it increase your profile from that point of view that had a positive effect, or was it largely neutral, or worse, I guess?
I think, well, it hasn't been negative in the sense that there's been a lot of very personal, honest conversation with clients about the existing clients about the situation, and they've by and large understood that. And actually, in terms of PR, it's given us a platform to be able to talk about tigerbond. So, in that sense, we're not a startup. Same office infrastructure, same people, same client portfolio. It's given us an opportunity to re-energize our activity. And as I say, the MBO was already going to happen. It sort of accelerated those plans. And literally
probably made it a bit cheaper as well.
Well, I don't know the details, I have to say, but within a couple of days we were winning new business as a tigerbond agency, and it's actually incredible how quickly. And as I say, it's easier for me to adapt because I'm the tigerbond trips off the tongue, more naturally than for other people that have been with BT for 15 or 20 years. But it's encouraging and interesting how quickly people have adapted to it, and I think that's because there's been a lot of open and honest dialogue and conversation from management to every single member of staff. So every single member of staff, whether they're an account exec in Belfast or whether they're an account director in Canada, knows the story, knows the background, knows the context, knows everything, and I think that's been probably key to us all feeling part of it, so that when we do eventually get our famous Freedom Festival, which is going to happen when the full unlock happens, we'll all be able to get together, and everyone's really looking for. And that was announced as BT, and is going to happen as Tigerbond at some point in the future. So I think it's people make it, don't they? So
yeah,
I'm
closely with it. Sorry, you go, Katie.
I was just going to say really quickly, the only thing from a client perspective would be that if you've got someone who's put content out there that is, to quote you, tone deaf and colorblind, I would just be a little bit kind of skeptical or nervous that I'm relying on an agency to approve content that's not going to be tone deaf and colorblind. But then I guess if your narrative was it's a rogue actor who kind of went off and did this, and it's not representative of the rest of the people who make up the agency, then I guess that would satisfy me. But that would be my kind of only concern, I guess.
And I think that that's been part of the open and honest conversation, that Gordon's name was above the door, and but in the words of our chief exec, he was a maverick. So we had a solid content strategy across all of our channels, and to Graham's point as well, we've always treated the agency like a client, so that the PR for the agency has not been a sort of second-class citizen that people have had to do in their spare time or when they've got a bit of a moment. So client resources haven't suffered because we've actually dedicated some resource within the agency to do that. And I think also, because he was a larger than life character, people have also recognised that is what happened. It was a single moment, and shows the power of PR, I suppose, in a negative sense, and also hopefully what can come out of it as a positive outcome.
That's interesting. You say that you've dedicated specific resource to kind of building the agency's fame, because one of the things that I kind of maybe loathe is too strong, but strongly dislike, is when we kind of sign the contract with a new agency and then the first question is, can we do a press release on the partnership? And it's like, well, why don't we do a press release when we have something to talk about? Some kind of key achievements or key results as a result of the partnership, as opposed to just you won the new business, because those contracts can be kind of torn up, or notice periods can be given. Not that I would ever threaten that or anything, but I mean, let's do something first before we talk about the partnership. Let's have something to say. So it's interesting. And also there's a worry that, is this coming out of retainer hours? When I'd rather have you spend time and resource on making us famous rather than yourselves. So it's interesting that you have that kind of dedicated time and resource to do exactly that.
It's a good point, Katie. I mean, I think I get the client's reluctance sometimes to, make the first action of a new agency to ping out a press release to the trade press. The problem is, for us with the trade press, it's only really a story if it's new news. So if we're waiting to get some run, so it's that balance between. I'm like you. I'd rather kind of release the news once we've got some runs on the board for a client and we know the relationship is started off on a nice footing, then week one get it out there. But we're under pressure. We're kind of getting a phone call or an email from one of the journalists on one of the industry titles who's got a tip off that we've pitched against X, Y, and Z for a certain bit of business. We know that we've won it. When can we announce it? Otherwise they can announce it. So we've got all those pressures from the media as well, who want to break the story while it's hot, not when we want to do it, which might be a month or two down the line, like you say, when there's something to talk about. The nice way to do it, of course, is to have the news and then follow that up with about a campaign that you're running for a client. So I think that's always the ideal for an agency. And I think most agencies are smart enough to know that they just don't want to announce it for the sake of it. There's got to be a bit of a benefit for a client.
You'd be surprised, Graham.
Well, maybe. Well, and of course, the other point to make as well, that kind of if you're working for Frank, we don't work to any hours. We don't have timesheets or anything like that. So you wouldn't have to worry about doing it out of hours that you're paying for, because we don't sell hours here at Frank.
I think that's interesting. And sorry, Katie, just very quick, but it is super, in terms of how to ask in the right kind of way, because it can look, it's very obvious, isn't it? If you're just going, we want to put a press release out about working, with you. The brand usually, if it's a decent sized brand, is going to know that there isn't really anything in it for them. So I do think, and I'm not saying don't do it, because I've always wanted to do that working at an agency leading new business, because if it's a big brand win, it's our industry, the marketing industry, want to know about that, and it's good. But in terms of winning lots of new business, that's not necessarily going to help. It's loads of other agencies are going to notice that, and some clients may notice, oh yeah, they've just, Eve have just appointed, I think recently there was a big release because Eve appointed Analog Folk, I think it was, wasn't it? So there was this was an appointment that made a bit of press, but actually a lot of the time that's going to get noticed more by other agencies than it is brands. If you're looking to PR yourself to brands, what I would imagine, Katie, you're more interested in is seeing the results and the work and what they've done.
Right.
If you've got a similar problem within your business that you need to solve, that's when I think from a new business point of view, it's more interesting, because you're going to be talking more to the needs of the brand. The brand is going to care, your prospect's going to care more about the problem that you helped the brand overcome, or the results that you got, and talking about that impact, than they are just an announcement. So if you're going to get one and you don't want to ask for both, get the one that tells the story rather than just the announcement. But obviously when you work with big brands like Graham does, often the trade press are on your back because they want the story, right? They want to be the first ones to release it.
And look, if it's that first scenario that Graham outlined, whereby PR Week is kind of, knocking down your door and asking, when are you announcing this? That's a different situation. So that's reactive, in which case the brand will be happy to contribute like a comment or whatever it is, because it's newsworthy, it's needed. Whereas just putting a press release out for the sake of it, saying you've signed a contract, when no one's asking for it, that's when I would wait. And like you said, Katie, talk about that scenario further down the line when you've actually helped a brand do something.
But there is a key. There's a key word, I think, that you're both sort of saying without saying, is momentum. And I think some agencies just feel like there's a momentum to them, and that normally comes from keeping a profile pretty current and pretty hot. And that momentum does bring about it, I believe, its own energy, and that energy of attraction sometimes, whether it be for other agencies, and that has an effect on staff. You've got to remember, from a recruitment point of view, it is quite important for agencies to have a profile within their industry, because obviously winning clients is important, but getting new staff to work for you is important. But it also, goes to comms directors, and PR directors also pick up on that. And agencies with momentum, you really get to notice. You particularly see it amongst, I'm lucky as well. I'm a non-exec to 3 or 4 other smaller startup agencies, not just PR agencies, actually, in social media, in purpose businesses, in experiential businesses. And you see with them that PR is such a big weapon in their arsenal of building up this momentum, and suddenly an agency is bigger than they seem, is punching above their weight, is going great guns, and that attracts staff and clients. Obviously, you've got to be careful that you don't over egg it too much, because some clients might feel, well, they're too busy for me, or they're too big for me now, I'm never going to fit in there, I'm just going to be a small fish in a big pond. So you've got to tread a bit carefully, but I think momentum is massively important in terms of faming an agency and ultimately winning some new clients.
See, that's quite interesting, that comment about being a small fish in a big pond, because I certainly look for more boutique end of the agency kind of spectrum, where I know I'm going to be a bigger fish in that pond, and therefore get a bit more kind of leeway on, I know you don't do the hours model, but I prefer that personally. And a little bit more kind of one-to-one with the kind of more senior members, where I need a bit of a confidant or someone to kind of trust in and soundboard ideas off. So I actually don't like going for the bigger agencies, because they kind of come across as too bureaucratic.
There we go. That's interesting. And that's the thing, is every brand and every agency is looking for a different kind of companion. So I think there's no harm in niching. Do not be scared to own a specific market. Just to go back to what some of the questions, so there are a few also in the Q&A which I will try to get to, but we only have 10 minutes, so we're going to have to quick fire these. But the original question was, how do you make your agency famous, especially if your client work is particularly, you know, not overly exciting or edgy, you know, and you know, maybe on smaller budgets, or not, you know, not as, you know, as flash as it could be. I think, you know, there's so many different things that we've mentioned here, some takeaways, but you know, you can fame your people. So think about showcasing the talent, the diversity that you have in your agency. I think that's, you know, something that we've all spoken about. So, and that can be from your most junior staff all the way to your most senior. You don't have to focus on one person, but you can focus on one person. That's done quite well to a certain extent for me and my agency. I host most of our things, and Graham, I know that you've, you know, been very involved in the industry. Wayne's spoken about how maybe it didn't, well, it has worked for them, but you know, there are obviously some risks with that, because people have personalities. Sometimes people say the wrong things. You know, you have to trust in that person, whether they're your MD, a CEO, or sat on your C-suite. You can also, of course, fame your work, but make sure that you're showing value. So rather than just, you know, and fame your clients, if you've got big, sexy client names, it does attract people. We can't pretend it doesn't. So, you know, do shout about those things in the right places at the right time. And the other thing that I thought was really nice, Graham, and this is just a bit of a summary, was talking about, you know, insights and maybe a process or something that you own. So for instance, your talkability process, making that famous and really driving that forward. So there's lots of, you know, it doesn't just have to be sexy work that you've done. It can be, if you haven't got that, you can fame your people, or you're a specific person, or look at, you know, developing something, or you hopefully you've already got something about yourselves which is quite unique, whether that's a process or something else, and you can use those things as your PR angle, and your marketing angle.
Just going to say as well that another little technique which I have seen used very successfully. There was certainly a big agency in the Northwest who weren't very well known for being creative. They're very successful, very big, but you know, quite a lot of sort of not very edgy clients, I suppose. And I've seen this used elsewhere as well, is that one technique is to actually find a charity, and perhaps a charity that is not one of the well-worn charities. So, you know, if you're in the sort of the pet sector, not the RSPCA or cat protection, although they're brilliant and, you know, they're valid, you know, causes, but, you know, a charity that really needs help, and now charities are even in greater need of help, and offer to do some pro bono work for them on the basis that you negotiate with them that there's a broader framework of creativity that they'll allow you to be involved in, and they will welcome the work, they'll welcome the fame that you're bringing for them. The only downside to it, which is not always a downside, but you know, it's often within charity infrastructures, that they don't have quite the formal, you know, approval process or a marketing team, or sometimes you're dealing directly with the trustees who are volunteers themselves. So sometimes it's more difficult to get work over the line, but that is a really interesting way of raising fame. And I've seen agencies become famous and win awards on the back of work they've done like that. So not only fulfilling a great cause for the charity sector, but also getting something out of it, you know, as well. So for the agency. So that's perhaps another thing that could be, and doesn't have to necessarily be very costly in terms of resource either. So
another point, just actually Katie mentioned it, I meant to say it was a good point, was she talked about when she was expanding her Euro agency, or looking at you know, hiring Euro agencies, she went to the Holmes report for inspiration, or look down on it, and that covers, I think, the top 250 agencies. There's the PR Week do an annual league table covering the top 150, then that's got about another 50 bubbling under or new agencies. There's loads of lists out there, and you know, they're free. I mean, you just got to provide your information, a bit of revenue figures and sometimes some staff numbers, and that actually doesn't cost an agency anything to enter, apart from a bit of time. And normally you have to sit down with your head of finance or finance director for a bit of a period of time to get the figures, which some people might find off-putting. Personally, I love my head of finance, but you know, other people might not. So that might be the reason for it. But I think it's really important to be that. And for me, the hard bit has been sometimes in the league table, and other people who run agencies will I guess feel it as well. Sometimes if you're on the back of a bit of a shit year, or you haven't really gone up and down too much in a percentage terms, which the bigger you are as an agency, then the harder it is to move by such a dramatic percentage as a startup. You kind of think, oh, I don't want to be in the league tables this year, and there's a bit of a reticence sometimes to be involved. My experience is that clients don't look so much at whether it's plus X% or minus Y%. They want to see a list, and Katie mentioned it, and I've always thought that it's better to be talked about than not to be talked about. It's better to be in a list than not to be in a list. And I think for PR agencies out there, there are literally loads and loads of lists that you can be in that don't cost anything to be in.
Yeah, it just provides visibility at the end of the day. And I think, you know, not having a very creative brief or a big budget to do creative work sometimes is actually more interesting for a prospective client, because we don't want to spend money or we find it difficult to go and ask for money, especially when we're going up against marketing teams who can demonstrate ROI. For PR, it's really difficult. So to be able to throw, you know, 10, 20 grand at a PR stunt is a really big risk for us. Whereas if you demonstrate the strengths of your relationships with media through just posting articles that you've got on behalf of other clients in top tier publications, for me, would take note.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Now, I noticed that we're literally 3 minutes before closing. It always gets the most exciting at the end. So I'm going to launch the poll. Please do have a look. And I've actually even let panelists vote on the poll. Is that the right thing to say? Yeah, I think so. So yeah, guys, do have a quick look at the poll and vote if you can. Evelyn, I can see that you've asked a question, which is a really good one. So you're a fully integrated agency with a focus on brand. You're not scared to pitch, but where are new opportunities found other than your own personal networks? Well, that's what the webinar is about every single month, and a lot of our content is around. But I would say, you know, of course, work your personal networks, but you know, some of the tactics and the things that we've spoken about today, you need to be pushing out to market as well to pull in. So, you know, great insights posts, driving things out. If you're just using your personal networks, I mean, we probably at Street, for instance, probably get 10% of us. I mean, maybe more than that, but 10% of our existing clients probably come from my personal network. The rest, well, I guess are my now personal network, but have come from us pushing out to the market, developing helpful content that is, you know, driving, I guess, a story and some helpful ideas to the market that I want to talk to. So I'm solving problems for the people that I know I need me, and I'm talking directly to their needs. So you need to come up with a PR, marketing and sales strategy that is talking to the audience that needs you, and then people will start to come to you, and also you'll be able to push out to the market and pull people in. But we talk about that a lot on the webinar, so hopefully that's a very quick answer to that one. And yeah, if anyone else has got any comments, we'll share them with you afterwards. And then there's a specific question here for you, Wayne, which I will share with you independently. And Rupert, we promise Wayne will come back to you with some specific advice, because sadly we have run out of time. But I hope you've all found this really useful. I have absolutely loved chatting to you all, and it's given me some good ideas for things that we should be doing from a PR perspective, because I'm a marketing agency and we tend to do more marketing than we do PR. So thank you for that. And if any of you have any questions or anything that we didn't get to, please feel free to email me, katie@street.agency. Most of you have got my emails and get lots of emails from me. And last but not least, you may well have seen that I am now sponsoring myself. I mean, who even knew that was something that you could do? But I have launched a new business. For any of you that haven't checked it out, it's called Tamba, the Agency New Business Academy. There will be lots of live events just like this one. In fact, this is going to be transitioning to being hosted and owned by Tamba in the next month or two. But it is an academy and an online membership platform that enables you to learn run through training programs, have snippets of really great content like some of the stuff that we've done today on every single subject in the world of new business for agencies. There's some great partnerships that we're offering you some huge discounts to some of the best tech providers and PR partners and everyone else that are involved with helping attract and win new business. So there's all sorts. Go and check it out, Tamber.io. And yeah, thank you all for joining. Thank you so much to my amazing guests. I'm going to end the poll so that you guys can see the results, and we will share them all with you. But yeah, I just want to end by saying a huge thank you to my fantastic panelists today. Thank you guys so much for giving up an hour of your time and coming to talk to us about how PR can help attract and win more new business for agencies. So thank you all, and hopefully see a lot of you again next month. See you all soon. Thanks, guys. Have a fantastic Tuesday, everyone.
Bye.